Explaining the European Union. A boat, a house, or a condo? What is the European Union, or EU, as it is also commonly known, and how it functions? It is something that keeps puzzling many, even within Europe, and indeed it may be a tricky question to give a quick answer to. Not to mention the extent to which the EU is similar or different from the US, and if it is correct to compare them and when. Looking on the internet from formal sources, including the EU itself, to various social media, we find all sorts of attempts at illustrating what experts call perhaps a bit pompously this supranational organization, which makes me think to some sort of superhero, which the EU is quite clearly not. To the other extreme, sometimes I have the impression the EU is a bit the sum of the collective national stereotypes of the states that are members to it. And this is a bit frustrating, especially when stereotypical jokes come up, even in formal contexts, more or less explicitly, more often than they should. And yet, the very fact that stereotypes survive so strongly, even at the highest levels, corroborates the image that I'm about to draw to explain what the EU is and how it works. I am Matteo Vaccaro Incisa, and I have taught and researched public international law, international economic law, and European Union law for a number of years. And I find it the best way to teach something, especially something as abstract as the law, comes best if you manage to convey a concept through an image, an analogy, or a metaphor that we are all used to. Well, I believe that most of us are used to the three concepts and images that I'm about to use. The first are common ways of referring to the EU. I will build on those to offer a third image, I believe more accurate, to explain what the EU is, one that let understand also how it will keep working in the future. The first is one of the metaphors that we hear often used these days of dealing with the impact caused by the ongoing pandemic on the healthcare and economy of many states. It is the idea, the very clear image, that we're all on the same boat. In the context of the European Union, and especially the Eurozone, which comprises the 19 nations that use the euro as their currency, this image implies that if one large state that is part of the Union, let's say Italy, does not manage to weather an economic crisis and goes legs up in the air, it will drag the rest of the Union down with it. The second common way of talking about the EU is, pandemic aside, that of comparing it with the United States of America. For instance, pro-EU people typically dream of some United States of Europe. Also, European people engaged in economic work, in particular trade, are used to compare the EU's aggregate performance as a single entity directly to that of the US. Well, both example, the idea that the EU is a boat, and the direct comparison with the US do not really help understanding what the EU is about and how it works. The boat idea is just too dramatic, and ultimately not true. A boat implies that those who are on it are being led towards a certain destination, and by whom, by the way, or if things go sideways, that passengers are bound to drown together. This sort of union of destiny through the image of a boat is just not right, as European Union or not, its members are expected as sovereign and independent nations to find their way, as do the other 170 plus states that are out there in the world. Let me just remind here that there is plenty of small states out there that are wealthier than any state in the EU, but also that there are several very large states we possibly wouldn't want to move into. The EU is an association of states, a quite tight one, no doubt, but still a free association that is based, like any, on the notion of reciprocal benefits of those that are party to it. The EU is not some sort of union of destiny out of necessity, at least not for most of its members. On the other hand, to directly compare the EU with the US doesn't make much sense in institutional terms, besides the international trade level, which is indeed the one competence that the EU manages autonomously from its member states. However, in 99% of the cases, the federal government of the United States can do a host of things that the European Union administration in Brussels cannot even dream of. Now, to understand at a figurative level the difference between the two, and especially in the way they work, let me make a basic living arrangement comparison. Think of the US as a house, a very large house, one with 50 rooms. Quite a mansion, no doubt, with a couple of dependants with all respect for Puerto Rico and the like. The US Constitution is the agreement by which this family, progressively enlarged to 50, agreed upon to live together under the same roof, a roof that is owned by a single person, or in this case the entity, the federal government. Think instead of the European Union as a condominium, which I'll now simply refer to as a condo. A beautiful condo comprising 27 apartments from Germany's large penthouse to Malta's studio by the entrance. The agreement here between the apartment owners, or homeowner association if you like, which out of the analogy is actually made of two EU basic treaties which indeed are no constitution, well, this agreement is limited to the management of the common areas, the stairs, the elevators, the parking lot, the gardens, and the management of these common areas is entrusted upon the European Union institutions. What is here the difference between the mansion and the condo? Well, most of us can immediately feel it, I think. In a house, the owner and head of this family of 50 that lives in it can decide pretty much anything about it. Of course, it should not be too nosy on what's going on inside the rooms in normal circumstances, even though it can access them anytime it wishes to. There is no lock at any door inside the house, no matter the teenagers living in it. And also, those occupying the various rooms still need to make use of the common kitchen once or twice a day, or very important, the toilet. And they will always need to pass through the common alley to get in and out of their rooms. To carry on, they need the common areas of the house. These common areas, like those that I just mentioned, out of the analogies that I'm using are, for instance, foreign relations, defense, and healthcare. The EU is nothing of the sort. Indeed, it's not a house. Even the smallest condo unit here has got a kitchen, well, in some cases, maybe a kitchenette. And it enjoys, however, the use of its own toilet, which is quite an essential thing for anyone who wants to be considered free from burdens. Therefore, the European Union consists of a bunch of property owners in a condo, and the primary function of the EU institutions is that of managing the fairly limited common areas with the fairly modest budget available. These common areas have been agreed upon back at a time with the agreement establishing the condo, and to change such an agreement, as we know, it requires pretty hefty majorities, when not the outright unanimity, by apartment owners. By the same analogy, the resources available to the condo manager are only a tiny fraction of those the apartment owners dispose of, and are paid annually and determined in accordance with the fractions of property of each unit. Again, quite like a condo. And like in many condos, gossip between neighbors and about other neighbors is a matter of course. And this is to reconnect to the earlier point I made with regard to national stereotypes. Look also at this difference. The US federal government, as the owner of the mansion and the head of its 50-strong family, has its own resources, which it collects and owns as the owner of the house and spends freely as it thinks best fit. For instance, from international aid programs to poorer countries, to military research, development, and purchases, without any family members from any room having much say on it. Also, no one can really get out of the house, nor anyone can talk to anybody else outside of it. But like this seems more like a penitentiary than a house, but that's not what I mean, of course. It's just an unwanted side effect of the analogy. In fact, much differently, the EU administration, as I said, as the condo manager, has only got the resources to manage the common areas. But even here, for any matter out of the ordinary business, to spend common resources or gathering extras, the manager needs to ask first to the condo board. Also, all apartment owners do entertain relation with people outside of the condo, meaning that even Malta's president gets invited on occasion to the White House. Well, does he? Be it as it may, let's look at it this way. As someone who lives in an apartment, tell me, do you feel obliged to let the condo manager in if he or she knocks at your door unannounced? Or would you consider appropriate for the condo manager to tell you how you should arrange your furniture and decorate your house? Indeed, no. And indeed, the European Union institutions have no say whatsoever on the way member states run their state. Of course, there's always the exception of major renovations that need to be shared with the condo administration because, let's say, you don't want to tear down a bearing wall. Out of the analogy, this is, for instance, the quite concerning reform of the judiciary that the Polish executive is pushing forth, which has triggered, to simplify, a letter of complaint from the Union. But even in these limited and quite exceptional cases, the actual power of the condo manager is quite limited. A letter of complaint, as that I just mentioned, or threatening to take you to court or to a fine. In most cases, however, to become real, any of this would be conditional on the consent of the other owners in the condo, like anything that is out of the ordinary business. Let's also look at this from the perspective of ownership. Here, for instance, those who have the largest units in a condo, which in this case are Germany, below France, another tab below Italy, then farther below Spain, Poland, the Netherlands, etc., etc. So the owners of the largest units, which in any combination may even have the relative majority of the votes on the board, can no doubt influence or even steer the topics on the agenda for discussion, and perhaps even the outcome of certain decisions, but they can't really decide just by themselves for everybody else just as such. To get to absolute majority or supermajority, and let's not even mention unanimity, it is each time a matter of negotiations. All the others can always vote against these or that use of the common areas, and anyway remain at all times the sole lords in their respective homes. Here is, in a nutshell, what I believe an effective image to represent the EU and how it works, as a great deal of people live after all in apartment units, in condos, and have at least some experience on how this works. Hence, to quickly recap, 3 pointers. First, the EU is not a boat, as EU member states are not some happy party cruising together towards some blissful destination, nor to the opposite, are they a bunch of convicts chained to the lower deck of a gaol, sharing all the same miserable fate in case of sinking of the ship. Second, the EU is not a house, like the US is, as the US is a single nation made of 50 states, hence a single large house with a single owner and 50 rooms. The common areas here are part of the house, including bathrooms and the kitchen that everyone needs to multiple times a day, well, if he or she is a healthy person, while room occupants can't really survive very long locked up indefinitely in the rooms. Third and last, the EU is like a condo, as its members are independent sovereign nations that have pooled some modest resources to manage certain common areas while retaining at least nominally all the powers, including that of leaving the condo itself, as we're seeing these days with the UK, and no matter how difficult how this moving out is proven to be. That is why, with the exception of the World Trade Organization, where the EU counts for 27 votes, in most other international organizations, like, for instance, the United Nations, the EU is either absent or, at best, an observer. Each time the states members do it need to agree on whether to express a common position, and quite often they don't. See, for instance, the invasion of Iraq or the recognition of Kosovo. On the other hand, this is also why the US always counts for one, and yes, it may well happen that the one owning a very large estate can end up paying more for certain things than 27 apartments combined. I guess this is the price of luxury. And jokes aside, I hope this analogy was helpful in clarifying a bit the difference between the US and the EU, and to offer a solid image that explains how the EU works and why it is not, nor it is likely to become, a single nation anytime soon. I mean, try asking your neighbors, with whom you may even have a very cordial relations, to merge his or her unit with yours starting from tomorrow and live like a happily family together. Then please get back to me and tell me what was the reply. If you like this video or podcast, depending on the platform you're using right now, feel free to subscribe to this channel to get notified when the next content will be released. Till the next time, bye!